All right. Well, welcome back. My name is Patrick Anderson. I'm your host. And today, as our special guest, we have John Groth with the Groth Law Firm. John is also a founding member of the National Academy of Motorcycle Injury Lawyers. And today we're talking about the Thin Blue Line Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club crash, that terrible tragedy that happened in Caryville, Texas, last weekend, July 18th. So, for those of you who don't know, this guy was drunk in the middle of the afternoon, came across the center line, and just plowed into this group of bikers who were out on a pleasant ride right after lunch. Terrible, terrible thing. So, uh, three people killed, four injured. One had terrible injuries to his leg. And I was able to talk to Steve Wyatt, who's the president of the Fort Myers chapter. And Steve was telling me all about the goodwill that they do in the community. I mean, they support food banks. They look out for the homeless. They take care of money for families of officers who've been killed in the line of duty, and just a lot of really tremendously good things in the community, outreach, and everything else. What I wanted to ask you is a question that's on a lot of the minds of our listeners, and that is, how would you go and get justice for these riders if this terrible tragedy happened in Wisconsin?
Hey, it's just a horrific matter to even discuss. I mean, motorcycle clubs do so much good for the community. One of the ways that we have to look at this is a matter of gathering evidence and figuring out what's going on and exactly what happened at that particular moment. You have to look at it as if you've been there before, meaning that you've handled these kind of cases before. And my firm, our attorneys, we have. These are things that sadly we've handled a number of these kind of situations where we have to get an investigator involved and really look at the scene and figure out what took place. My understanding is that the riders were driving staggered like they should, right? And
Right.
that they weren't doing anything wrong. With that, you have to look at what's the evidence on the ground. And that's literally what's the evidence on the ground. Where are any skid marks, yaw marks? Where's your gloves? Where did your boots end up? Things like that, so you can figure out after you get an investigator involved and maybe an accident reconstructionist to see, well, what happened? How fast was this person going? Where were they going? How long was that other driver, the at-fault driver, maybe going in and out of traffic, or how long was it before he went across the line? Things like that. It's so important as soon as you can after a crash to get the evidence. And with that, you want to make sure that you get there before Mother Nature comes in with a storm to take it away, or you have somebody who just is doing their job and cleaning the streets comes and takes it away. And then so you have the evidence on the ground. In addition, you have to make sure you can try to get as many videos as you can. A lot of our clubs have videos on the bikes, which is fantastic because that gives you real evidence, real video, live video of what actually took place. So you want to get that in addition to any videos that are maybe in the sky. If there's something on a stoplight, on a stop sign, on any kind of Department of Motor Vehicles pole, so you can grab that evidence also. Those are very important things, in addition to getting the evidence from people's memories. The longer you wait, the hazier it's going to be. So you want to make sure you get one of our investigators over there to speak to as many witnesses as you can, so we can make sure that we preserve and know what actually took place, because you're going to get many different perspectives. And there might be somebody who is driving by who sees something and thought they saw something different, and that could change the whole tenor of the situation.
Right. Now, there's different legal issues, you were telling me, with the injuries as opposed to the taking care of the families of the people who got killed. What do you do for them at this real trying time when they're trying to plan for funerals and everything?
Well, that's such a terrible thing to really have to deal with at this point, because you want to be able to, as the family, want to be there for the person who you just lost, and that's traumatic, and that's not only financially trying, it's mentally trying, it's physically trying. So what we want to provide, and what we do provide, is assistance, so you can get the peace of mind to understand we're going to do all the heavy lifting for you in investigating the crash and trying to figure out from there what we can do to alleviate some of the stress at this particular moment in time. And that's getting whatever we can in immediate money to get medical bills paid, or the funeral bill paid, things like that. You also have to understand that in Wisconsin, there's a wrongful death statute. So when somebody passes away because of somebody else's negligence, we would create what's called like a special administration. It's kind of like a probate kind of matter, but you create that so then you can have that legal entity go and investigate what took place. So we would do that for you. We do that for all of our victims, everyone who has passed away because of somebody else's negligence. So then we can continue, and while you grieve and do what you need to be doing, we can do what we need to do to protect your rights and make sure that we're not leaving any stone unturned.
Right. And then it's different for the people who are still alive, and then they're not able to work. Their medical bills are going to stack up. What do you do for them?
Well, so that's a very good point too, Patrick, is that with the number of people who have been injured and then killed in this crash, you want to separate the two. So you want to look at the wrongful death, the people who have passed away, and then create those entities for them. And then for the people who are currently with us and still suffering, and maybe even in the hospital to this day, you want to make sure that you're working with them to figure out, well, is the right insurance being tapped? Are you submitting medical bills to insurance? There's a thing in Wisconsin called the collateral source rule. Some auto insurance or motorcycle insurance companies, the adjusters will say, well, submit all the bills to the insurance, to the biker insurance. That's not the way to do it. It should go through health insurance, because you want to make sure that you aren't suffering the financial losses, because you may only have, let's say, med pay in Wisconsin is $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. If you have a $15,000 hospital bill from a helicopter flight, that's going to eat up all your med pay right away. So the adjuster's advice is really wrong. It's something where you need to make sure that you understand what's going to be done now, so we can certainly help you in the end, and how to maximize the case, how to maximize the benefit for those people, so they have money that they can not only help them through to get your medical bills, your co-pays, any other expenses you might have in the short term, but also the medium and long term with long-term care. And then what's your wage loss? How many hours of wages, how many weeks, how many months of wages have you suffered, so we can make sure that you aren't having those ongoing problems for years to come. So you have to look at it in a manner that you can optimize to maximize the recovery now and at the end. It can really get complex really fast, and that's why you want to make sure that you have somebody who has been there from the beginning and tried these cases and knows the strategy going in right now, and what that's gonna do, what a yes or no answer to some certain question right now, and how that will affect you 3 years from now.
Gotcha. Now, obviously, this guy was drunk. He'd been drinking. What I also heard from the news is that he's had other felony arrests, and actually, I don't know the details, but he ran over a guy with his truck at the bar, and then jumped down and attacked him, bit his ear. I mean,
got his ear. I know.
Yeah, he's just a terrible guy. But how do you handle situations like this with a drunk driver or somebody who has other issues?
Well, and this goes to really seeking justice, right? Is you want to be able to get compensation so you can help the family, so you can help the injured party at this point and their family. And then you have to look at really social justice and what's going to happen to tell others, hey, don't do this in the future. You can't drunk, or you can't be drunk, you can't be high, you can't drive in this kind of manner. In Wisconsin, it's horrific, right? I mean, we have stories of people who are 2, 3, 4, 5, 9-time drunk drivers. It's a terrible situation. And when you're in a motorcycle club and you're on the road, the last thing you expect is somebody in the middle of the day to be drunk driving and cross the center line. So what we do, and what I've appeared for and by my clients in the criminal courts is standing there so we can make sure that they're protected the entire way. Now, in Wisconsin, luckily, there's usually a victim's assistant who is assigned by the DA to stand with the family, stand with the injured party. But we want to make sure that anything that is said in court and anything we can do to get more information or get more evidence is done and done in the right way. So we're ultimately protecting them because, criminal courts, there's speedy trials. Civil courts are not speedy. So you might have a criminal trial for the at-fault person that takes place within, 6 months or something else. But at that same 6-month period, an injured party may just be getting out of physical therapy. Their case may not be anywhere near ready to settle at that point. So we would still be gathering information from that at-fault party. So we would go to court with and stand side by side with the injured, with the victim in that situation, and talk to them and make our case, help them explain to the judge what's going on. Because in these kind of situations, you always see it on TV, it's something that almost always happens, where you have the at-fault person, the criminal, there with their family and saying this was, an accident, it was a once-in-a-lifetime thing or whatever it's going to be. And of course, it's their family member, so they're going to do that. But we need to be able to be the voice for the victim in this situation and stand there with them and give them the confidence, give them the knowledge, give them the information so they can make their voice heard, so they can really serve justice and make sure that the judge hears both sides of the story and understands really what took place.
Yeah. Now, in this case, it's pretty clear cut, who the at-fault party is. But I remember back a while with Tracy Morgan, and he was, run into with this Walmart semi-truck. And then the Walmart attorneys came back and tried to say, well, he was at fault because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, which it just seemed ridiculous at the time. But I found out afterwards that this happens a lot, that, attorneys will try to play games with the blame game. And now, what are issues with comparative or contributory negligence there in Wisconsin?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, that's the magic word you got there, Patrick, where you and I understand this, and many people who are in our world, certainly insurance adjusters and insurance defense attorneys understand this, but many others don't, because you assume if somebody crosses the center line, well, they're at fault. Or if somebody rear ends somebody else, the person who did the rear ending is at fault. But in Wisconsin, there's a thing called contributory negligence, and there's comparative negligence. So comparative negligence says that if you are 50% or more at fault, you have to pay for the other person's damages. Now, what that means for my clients is the victims, they have to show that they weren't more at fault than the other party. If the defense attorney, for example, can point the finger at my client and say, for some reason, they're 51% at fault, then they recover zero. They get nothing, which is preposterous, but that's the law, and that's what we live with. So we have to right away gather whatever evidence we can to make sure that we're looking at those scales of justice and making sure that we have it so it's teetering more towards the at-fault party. And then you have contributory negligence, that, what could we have done differently, with a thing called conspicuity. Did you see what you're looking at to make sure that you're taking the right maneuvers, making evasive action, things like that. Those are all very important things. And certainly when you're looking at that 50-50 and 51-49, that's a pretty tight line, or a pretty, a close call right there. So we need to make sure that we know right away that we have all the evidence we need to push that in our client's favor. And it's something that it can be as nonsensical or as innocent seeming as an adjuster calling somebody right after a crash and saying, hey, how fast were you going? Well, was it this fast? Was it that fast? Or was there a bend in the road? Or was it hilly? Whatever they're saying that for a reason, and they're trying to get a statement from you for a reason, so they can reduce their negligence, because they want to try to get you over that hump and try to say that you're 51% or more responsible. So that's so important that you don't say anything. You wait until you get an attorney and we can do all the talking, so we can protect your rights, because comparative negligence, contributory negligence in Wisconsin is really a tough deal. And it's certainly, sometimes people say it's not fair, but that's the law that we're dealt with, and that's what we have to deal with.
Yeah, it's not only not fair, but they try some weasel moves on their end so they can deny your claim or not pay. I've seen that before, and there's no real
Mm-hmm.
hard and fast rule about what these percentages are, right? Isn't that just a matter of how well you
No,
negotiate or what leverage you
the
get?
correct. And it's something, Patrick, that ultimately no one's going to know. Even if you go to trial, the jury is not going to know what their determination is, what the real meaning of that is. So if the jury comes back and says it's 51-49 in a certain manner and it's against the victim, they might think, oh, well, that's fair, because they assume that the jury gave 49% of the damages to the victim. Well, because they're never told, that's what I think is a little bit unfair, because the jury might think something when the law is the exact opposite. So you have to understand that insurance companies know all this, and they have investigators, attorneys. They're doing whatever they can to minimize what they have to pay, because that's how they can afford to be on TV every 16 seconds or however often it is. And that's how they can afford to be in the big buildings and have the big names be spokesmen for them, because they know how to whittle away at the damages and try to minimize whatever they can and whenever they can.
Gosh, yeah. Now, another question that comes up quite a bit is people are always wondering about what is pain and suffering, and what is punitive damages. And in this case, since the guy has had other arrests and everything, do punitive damages apply, or what's the real issue there?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of things with that, Patrick. You have pain and suffering. So in Wisconsin, it's really best to describe it as pain, suffering, disability, and loss of enjoyment of life. So it's the pain that you're going through. You're not able to be pain-free unless you take medication or you have physical therapy, things like that. The disability, maybe you are not able to move your arm like you could, because you have a loss of range of motion. That's something too. And then simply loss of enjoyment of life. You're not able to ride. I wasn't able to ride for 6 months, let's say, after a crash. Well, that's really a big loss. If you're somebody who likes just throwing darts, well, if you're not able to for a long period of time, that's a loss of enjoyment of life. And that's something that needs to be compensated. And the law in Wisconsin says that that's something that a jury ultimately, that we would argue in a settlement or at trial, that's what the jury has to account for, is take the person before, what were they doing to enjoy their life? What were they doing to be pain-free? What were they doing while they were pain-free? And then take them after the crash and look at it in different chunks of time, because you're going to have, if you're in the hospital for a few days, you lost everything. You're not able to do anything. You're not able to mow your lawn or do just little things around the house. And then medium term, physical therapy gets in the way of being able to go to kids' birthday parties or whatever that is. And then long term, if you have a disability and you're not able to do what you could do before, that's a big difference. So you want to look at that portion to say that's what pain and suffering is. It's those different elements. And then there's punitive damages. Now, punitive damages come into play when somebody acts in an intentional disregard of somebody else's rights. So if you're certainly drunk and you're driving and you're aware that, hey, if you're drunk driving, you're going to endanger somebody else, that's pretty obvious. It could be something where you're texting and driving, and there's signs everywhere now, right, that say texting and driving can be very dangerous, it can kill. So you want to make sure that that when you're gathering evidence, that you look at what was the FL person doing. Was it drunk driving, texting driving? Was it something where they were, if they're over the road carrier, maybe they didn't get enough sleep, and they knew that, hey, if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to be drowsy driving, things like that. Those things all could put punitive damages in play. Punitive damages then go towards the looking at something as punishing somebody else and trying to
Right.
then make
Right.
that person responsible in a fashion that's going to show others, hey, because I did this bad deed, this bad act, that I am going to get punished. And then you look at other people and say, okay, I the damages might be, $500,000 or whatever would be enough to deter others from doing that bad act. What I always say in my trials is I want a jury to award an amount of money that tomorrow morning, when somebody wakes up and they say, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z today. Well, maybe I'll have to take a second look because I don't want to get punitive damages of that amount of money on me. So I'm going to deter that. I'm going to stop from doing that bad act.
Right. And that's another form of justice as well. Now,
Correct. Yeah.
one thing I just learned, John, and maybe you can talk about this, but when I bought my insurance, my agent told me I was going to have full coverage. So I really thought that meant something. But now I come to find out that I didn't at all have the right coverage I needed for my motorcycle and for my family if something happened. So what can you tell us about insurance in Wisconsin?
Sure. Well, and this is going back to, really the beginning of our conversation about what kind of compensation we can get to help people in the short term, medium term, long term, and that goes towards really the term full coverage. Full coverage, it doesn't really mean anything, right, Patrick? I mean, full coverage
Right.
is whatever the law says in that state. So in Wisconsin, an insurance agent could sell you coverage saying it's full coverage, and it's only $25,000 in coverage. Well, $25,000, if you're on a bike and you have to get a helicopter to fly it to the local hospital, that could be $16,000, $20,000. Well, that's almost all gone. So full coverage is really it's something that you have to look at differently in every person's life, because there are easy ways that you can get as much coverage as you can, and that's with uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. And then the little trick of the trade, I say, and something that insurance agents love to sell you because it's pretty cheap to sell and it's an easy sell, and that's an umbrella policy, and tie that into your uninsured or underinsured policy. So then you might be paying for $100,000 in coverage, but if you have an umbrella policy, the umbrella could be $1 million. And that's really what you have to use to protect yourself against somebody else's negligence. Because if somebody else is drunk driving, for example, they're not responsible, which means they probably don't have much of any insurance. They may just have the state limit, which again is $25,000. But if what they did sends you in a helicopter to a hospital, that's right there, 20, 30, however many thousands of dollars just in medical bills. And then you just stay overnight. And then if you lost your wages, if you have other incidental costs too, it could be tens upon tens of thousands of dollars of bills that you have to pay. Now, those are things that you really need to look at your insurance in a way that you're going to protect yourself from somebody else's negligence, from somebody else's bad act. And you have to take anything that an insurance agent says and really look at it really carefully. And I would be happy to sit down with you too. That's something we offer, our free insurance reviews. And you can look at that and I can tell you examples of, okay, this is what in Wisconsin the average emergency room bill is. And I have printouts that I can show you pretty darn easily to say this is what this means. So if, God forbid, you're involved in a crash, this is the kind of coverage you should probably have to really protect you and protect your family, so you don't have the additional wage loss that you have just lost because you don't have enough insurance coverage.
Right. And then you're not trying to sell insurance, so you're just giving people really good
No,
advice from your experience. Yeah, that's
no,
wonderful.
yeah, that's
Now,
correct. Yeah.
if we've been talking about injuries and accidents and crashes, but if somebody has other issues, like if they're pulled over for a DUI, or if they need criminal defense or something to do with Second Amendment rights, do you still want them to call your office, and how would you help them then?
Sure. And I tell everybody that I want to be your attorney and I will help you in any way I can. If I'm not able to do it, I have a network of attorneys across the state, in all 72 counties that I can get you to, and somebody that I trust, that I've shook their hand, I've looked at them, eye to eye, and I understand who these people are, and I know how they work with their clients, how they work hard for their clients. So I will be happy to give you a referral to somebody if I can help you. If I can, that's fantastic, and I'll do my best. But otherwise, if it's somebody that is closer to you and you're part of the state, I'd be happy to get you somebody that I trust, and hopefully you can trust them too.
Right. So it's a phone call to you and the advice, is that all free?
It's all free, certainly. You can give me a call 7 days a week. We have somebody who's always available. The phone number is 414-999-0000. It's pretty easy to remember, 414-999-0000. And our website's grothlawfirm.com or milwaukeebikerattorney.com, GROTH lawfirm.com.
John, that's great. Really appreciate your time today. Now, at the break, you also mentioned that you had a free legal guide for motorcycle compensation if somebody's been in a crash, and then also a rider VIP card with extra benefits.
Yes, you can go to our website and you'll get directed over, and you can just certainly request that, or you can give us a call and we can send one to you. I'd be happy to do that also. But probably the easiest way is go on to our website, fill out the form, and we'll get that off to you.
All right. Well, we've been talking with John Groth with the Groth Law Firm, and John is also a founding member of the National Academy of Motorcycle Injury Lawyers. John, thanks for your time today. And listen, we're about to go into a break, but would you do me a favor and stick around? I got a couple more questions for you.
Will do. All right. Thank you, Patrick.
All right. Thank you.
Good talking to you.